please.
Yeah. All right, good. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum's train number 100. You're on board the Missionary Ridge Local today, a 6-mile round trip that will be taking us across 4 bridges and through a pre-Civil War era tunnel. My name is Travis. I will be your flagman and historian today. Your conductor today is Jason, and your engineer is Andrew. Now, the railroad we're traveling over today was originally completed back in August of 1859 by the East Tennessee and Georgia Railroad Company. East Tennessee and Georgia, as it was initially built, was designed to connect Knoxville, Tennessee and Dalton, Georgia. If one wished to travel between Knoxville and Chattanooga by rail, well, you kind of couldn't get here from there. You had to catch the train in Knoxville, traveling down through Loudon, Niota, Athens, and Cleveland, Tennessee, and then south through Cohutta, Georgia to Dalton. From Dalton, you would then transfer to a train on the Western and Atlantic Railroad through Tunnel Hill and Ringgold back to Chattanooga. This is until August of 1859 when the East Tennessee and Georgia Railroad constructed what became known as the Chattanooga Extension. This branched off of the main line at Cleveland, Tennessee, running through McDonald and Ottawa to Chattanooga. Construction of the Chattanooga Extension was partially funded and heavily supervised by a major stockholder in the company by the name of James Anderson Whiteside. That's the name you'll be hearing several more times during our trip today. We're going to jump ahead to 1894 now and the formation of the Southern Railway. The Southern Railway takes over ownership of this property in 1894. About 1906, they heavily upgrade this railroad. They decided to raise it up on a fill to get it above flood levels that had plagued this area for many years. Before the construction of the Chickamauga Dam during the Great Depression, the city of Chattanooga was extremely flood prone. They also added a second parallel main line so the trains could pass each other without having to stop. And then they also upgraded the signal system. Still, these upgrades did not allow for enough efficiency to satisfy Southern Railway's management. And in 1954, the Southern abandoned the line that we're using today that goes through the tunnel in favor of a new route to the north, bypassing Missionary Ridge altogether. That new route is off to our left and is still used today by their successor, Norfolk Southern. As we departed from Grand Junction, we left actually going the wrong way. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn our entire train around to face the opposite direction. We pull forward off the base leg of the Y. Yeah, this track of by the way, is called a Y, spelled W-Y-E. It's like a giant 3-point turn. We pull forward off the base leg of the Y through a switch. The locomotive is going to push us a short distance in reverse around the east leg of the Y through another switch. And then we will pull forward down the west leg, completely turning our entire 3-car train plus the locomotive to face the opposite direction. This way we are facing the right way to head for East Chattanooga, which is in a westbound direction. Yes, we do have to go west to East Chattanooga. Just please try not to think about that too hard. I don't want to have to call the fire department today. Now, if you compare the Y to our turntable at East Chattanooga, where we will turn only the locomotive around, the Y does take up a significantly larger amount of real estate. So as that old saying goes, give me 40 acres and I'll turn this rig around. As we back around the Y, let's talk just a minute or two about the passenger cars on our train today and their unique histories. We'll start off with the car right behind the locomotive today, and that is the newest of our 3 cars, and that is the Southern Railway number 832. 832 was originally built in 1949 by the Budd Rail Car Company of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the Southern Railway. Those lights stay up year-round in the building. This place transforms during Christmas. The Southern Railway, they operated the car on many of their big name trains, including the Ponce de Leon, the Royal Palm, the Birmingham Special, the Southerner, and the Crescent Limited, later rebranded as the Southern Crescent. We acquired the car in 2011 from another preservation group up in Michigan, and we finished restoration on it about a year and a half ago. The car has been restored inside and out to how it appeared when brand new in 1949. The middle and last cars on our train today, though, I'm going to talk about them as a kind of a lump sum here. You see, cars 390 and 907 were built at the same time by the same builder for the same railroad and assigned to the exact same train. Cars 390 and 907 were both built in 1947 by the American Car and Foundry Company in St. Charles, Missouri for the Central of Georgia Railway. And they were assigned to a train called the Nancy Hanks II, operating daily between Savannah and Atlanta, Georgia, with 8 intermediate stops in between. Even with those 8 stops, the Nancy still managed to average over 50 miles per hour, making it at one time the fastest regularly scheduled train in the United States. That train was named after a famous undefeated racehorse by the name of Nancy Hanks, which in turn was named for Nancy Hanks Lincoln, the mother of Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, we're going to go forward the rest of the way to East Chattanooga now. Cars 390 and 907 later became the property of the Southern Railway when they acquired all of the assets of the Central of Georgia in 1963. The biggest difference between these two cars is car 390 is considered a combination or combine car and has a small baggage room at the back of the car that was used by the baggage master and the postal clerk on the route between Savannah and Atlanta. It only has seating for about 54 passengers, whereas car 907 is a straight-through coach with seating for 68 passengers. Number 907, and I want you to pay attention to that red car on the left too, number 906, I'll come back to it in just a minute. Car 907 is a former segregated passenger car known as a Jim Crow car. It had its wall that divided the car into 2 distinct halves removed in 1954 when the Central of Georgia desegregated. Car 906 that we just passed a minute ago is still a segregated passenger car and is one of only a handful of cars of that type in service in the United States with its segregating wall still intact. While that is a very unfortunate time in our nation's history, it is one that we must still learn from and preserve just so that we do not risk repeating that history. So having 2 examples of a car with the segregating wall and without allow us to effectively teach that history here at this museum. We're now starting to come off of the Y and onto the main line. Once we get by these passenger cars and locomotive 5000 coming up on the left side of the train here in just a moment, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, hot and heavy part of our tour today. So we'll start out by pointing out a few of my favorite trees that we're going to be passing on this railroad. So this is a walk in the woods, folks. On the right side of the train, you're going to see that one. Right over there. I really like that one up there with the pine needles on it. Ooh, you see those 2 over there that are right next to each other? Those 2 right over there? I call those 2 Johnny and June. I have 4 other trees out there that are right next to each other. I've got Lester and Earl and Fred and Ginger as well. And then on the right side of the train, I got Smokey, I got Bandit and Snowman over there. And down below us on the left side of the train, you're going to see a gravel road. That gravel road is the path of the original 1859 railroad. As we go along that old road bed here in just a minute, you're going to see a clearing, and that clearing is a very special tree. But this tree has a yellow stripe painted on it, indicating the high water mark of the flood of 1867, in which the waters of South Chickamauga Creek reached a point 9 feet above this railroad. The Tennessee River and adjacent Chickamauga Creek here rose 58 feet from their normal levels during that flood, which was the worst flood in Chattanooga history to date. And we're now going to cross our longest and highest bridge over South Chickamauga Creek at 65 feet high and 360 feet in length. Now that other railroad you see off to the right side of the train is known as the Tyner Branch. The Tyner Branch was initially constructed in 1942 by the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway to connect the Western and Atlantic Railroad main line with the Volunteer Army Ammunition Plant here in Chattanooga, where they manufactured TNT from World War II until the early days of Desert Storm. Today, the volunteer site is now the home of the Enterprise South Industrial Park and the Volkswagen Assembly Plant, where they manufacture the Atlas SUV and the ID4 electric car. A little bit of irony that a site once used to make material to fight the German army is now the home of the German car plant. Coming up in just a moment is going to be bridge number 2 over the Western and Atlantic Railroad. The Western Atlantic was the very first railroad to be completed into the city of Chattanooga, being completed on May 9, 1850. It was built by the state of Georgia, operated by the state of Georgia, and to this very day, February 15, 2026, that railroad that is below us right now is still the property of the state of Georgia. So yes, Georgia does own land in Tennessee. And depending on the outcome of a football game every year, this may or may not also include Neyland Stadium. Go Dogs. I'm kicking you off this train, sir. As I was saying, that is the Georgia State Railroad. Because of it being the Georgia State Railroad, it was not going to be permitted to be allowed to cross the Tennessee state line when it was under construction. But that same gentleman I mentioned a few minutes ago, James Anderson Whiteside, was a Tennessee state legislator. And through lobbying or pestering efforts, however you want to word it, he gained permission for that railroad to cross the state line into downtown Chattanooga, where they built a small yard and station. Today, that railroad, while it is still Georgia state property, is now leased from the state by CSX Transportation as their Atlanta to Chattanooga main line, and they dispatch it from their headquarters in Jacksonville, Florida. That railroad, connecting middle Georgia with the Tennessee River Valley, was a target multiple times by Union saboteurs during the American Civil War. The most famous attempt on that railroad was in 1862, whereas the most successful was General Sherman and his box of matches in 1864. We're going to talk about the 1862 event, though, known as the Andrews Railroad Raid. 24 Union spies under the command of a civilian by the name of James Andrews began working their way south out of Shelbyville, Tennessee on April 7, 1862, with the Union Army who could use it as a base for raids into the Deep South. As these Union soldiers, dressed in civilian clothes, which automatically made them spies, by the way, as they worked their way south behind Confederate lines, 2 of the men were forced to drop out of this group and join the Confederate Army because they were suspected to be Union soldiers. And on the morning of their planned raid, 2 other men overslept and missed the raid altogether. 18 soldiers and 2 civilians in this raiding party boarded a northbound passenger train in Marietta, Georgia, behind a steam locomotive named General. They rode the General and its passenger train north from Marietta to Big Shanty, today known as Kennesaw, which was a scheduled breakfast stop for the crew and passengers. You see, back then they didn't have dining cars, so they had to make scheduled meal stops along the route. While the crew and passengers are inside George Lacey's hotel next door to the depot enjoying a hot breakfast at about 6 o'clock in the morning, in front of a 3,000-man Confederate camp without a single shot being fired, these men uncoupled the passenger cars and illegally borrowed the General and 3 freight cars. And away they ran up the Western and Atlantic Railroad, tearing up track and cutting telegraph lines behind them. But what they neglected to take into consideration was a very ticked-off conductor, 26-year-old William Fuller, who starts chasing his train, first on foot, then on a push cart, literally a flat car pushed along the ground with a pole like a flat-bottomed boat, and then on 3 separate locomotives, finally commandeering a locomotive named Texas near Adairsville, Georgia. Now the Texas was facing south. The General was running north. So Fuller was forced to take the Texas and its crew and run them in reverse, chasing the General. And he did so, pushing the Texas and its crew to speeds approaching, if not exceeding, 60 miles an hour in reverse on a railroad where the regular average forward speed was between 15 and 18 miles an hour. I told you he was a little bit mad.
Oh yeah, he was.
Well, Fuller ends up staying so close that these raiders don't have enough time to complete their sabotage or take on enough fuel to make it to Chattanooga. So as a result, after a chase of 87 miles, the General runs out of steam near Ringgold, Georgia. The raiders abandon the engine and flee into the woods, and within a week, 22 of these 24 men are captured. They were imprisoned here in Chattanooga, court-martialed, and then taken to Atlanta, where 8 of them are almost immediately named as spies. Those 8 men are today buried in Chattanooga's Veterans Cemetery on Holtzclaw Avenue, which is the oldest national cemetery in the United States and second largest only to Arlington. The rest of the raiders either escaped from their prison cells in October of 1862 or were paroled back to the north in a prisoner exchange in March of 1863. And of these 24 men, to date, 21 of them have become recipients of our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor. In fact, the very first Medal of Honor ever awarded in U.S. history went to one of these raiders, a then 19-year-old private named Jacob Parrott. That's a short but true story of the Andrews Raid, more commonly known as the Great Locomotive Chase. There's a lot more out there on this topic. My favorite story from the Civil War, but if I don't shut up about it, we'll be here for an hour. So, moving on. You heard the engineer sounding the horn just a moment ago, meaning we're now approaching our tunnel through Missionary Ridge. 986 feet in length and completely hand-dug, using primarily Irish labor. These crews started digging from each side of Missionary Ridge in 1856, breaking through the middle in 1858, only 3 inches off from one another when they go through. The tunnel was officially dedicated on August 9, 1859, and named Whiteside Tunnel, or James A. Whiteside. Though today it is more commonly referred to as the Missionary Ridge Tunnel. As we exit from the tunnel, we are now on the side of Missionary Ridge that faces downtown Chattanooga. This area was highly contested over during the American Civil War as part of the battles for Chattanooga. Now, following the Union Army's catastrophic and rather embarrassing defeat at Chickamauga in September of 1863, they retreated into their fortifications up here within Chattanooga and were promptly surrounded on Lookout Mountain and on Missionary Ridge by the Confederate Army. Major Confederate players here in Chattanooga included, but were not limited to, Generals Braxton Bragg, Patrick Claiborne, John C. Breckinridge, and William J. Hardy. You also had your major Union players, Ulysses Grant, George H. Thomas, William T. Sherman, Gordon Granger, Joseph Hooker, Oliver Otis Howard, Philip Sheridan, and a young first lieutenant named Arthur MacArthur Jr. Well, that is Lookout Mountain fell first on November 24th, 1863, in what has become popularly known as the Battle Above the Clouds. Missionary Ridge fell the next day on November 25th to Union forces, and then the battles for Chattanooga, ending in a Union victory, culminated at Ringgold Gap on November 27th, 1863. During the assault on Missionary Ridge, that young first lieutenant, Arthur MacArthur Jr., was in charge of the 24th Wisconsin Volunteers. And as he led his men up the ridge, he was heard shouting, "On Wisconsin," which is today one of their state mottos and the name of the University of Wisconsin's fight song. As he led his men up the ridge, he ends up seizing the regimental colors from a fallen comrade, still carrying that regimental battle flag up the ridge. He is wounded twice, yet still manages to plant that battle flag on the crest of Missionary Ridge, claiming it is now being under Union control. He is then escorted back down Missionary Ridge by General Philip Sheridan, who tells a young medic, "Take good care of this young man. He just won himself the Medal of Honor." It took 27 years, but Arthur MacArthur Jr. in 1890 did receive his Medal of Honor. Now, some years later, during World War II, his son, General Douglas MacArthur, also received the Medal of Honor as well for his actions during the Philippine campaign. They are one of only 2 known father-son duos to have both received the Medal of Honor, the other duo being President Theodore Roosevelt and his son Theodore Jr. We are coming now into our destination of East Chattanooga. Once the train comes to a stop in front of the East Chattanooga Depot, we invite you to exit with us and join us down at our turntable. We're going to take the locomotive off the train, put it out on the turntable, and spin it around to face the opposite direction to pull us back to Grand Junction. Following the demonstration of the turntable, while the engine is going around and getting on the other end of the train to pull us back, I'll lead you over to our restoration shop where you'll see a few of our ongoing projects, including the annual inspection on one of our steam locomotives and a soon-to-be one-of-a-kind Pullman sleeping car. I do have our East Chattanooga Depot is also going to be open as well. There's a selection of snacks and drinks and small souvenirs available for purchase. Restrooms will be inside the depot as well. I do have a few safety rules I need you to please pay attention to and follow while here in East Chattanooga. Please do not wander off on your own onto the track, scrabble, or ballast. Stay behind all marked yellow lines and safety ropes. Please don't climb on any of the equipment around East Chattanooga here, and don't stand in the middle of the tracks and get your picture made. It doesn't look good, and it sets a bad example for those around you. And also, most importantly, let's have fun. When the train comes to a stop, you can exit at either end of the middle passenger car, car 907, which is the car I am speaking from. You can exit at either end of this car. Well, once we get everyone down to the turntable, we will begin the demonstration. Ladies and gentlemen, station stop, East Chattanooga. Please watch your step as you go down the stairs onto the platform. They can be a bit slick, and they are steeper than they do appear to be sometimes.
Objective, listen up like this.
Out here on a turntable. The best way I can describe to you what a turntable is outside of a disco party back in the 70s is a giant Lazy Susan or an overgrown merry-go-round for trains. This particular turntable that I'm standing on this afternoon was built in 1916, about 110 years ago. It was built by the American Bridge Company of Ambridge, Pennsylvania for the Central of Georgia Railway. It was installed at the 7th Street locomotive shops in Macon, Georgia. It was used in Macon for about 9 years, but it was deemed too small for continued use of that facility. It was then moved up to Cedartown, Georgia, and Polk County, south of Rome. For those of you who might not know much about Georgia geography, Rome is in Floyd County. Polk County is the next county down on the Alabama line. This turntable lived in Cedartown until the late 1970s, when it was then moved up here to East Chattanooga, donated to us by then owner Southern Railway. We restored the turntable to present condition in 1982 at a cost of about $105,000, and have been using it here since July 4th of 1982. From end to end, it measures in right at 80 feet in length, and it comes in at about 80 tons in weight. 81 was Jason's standing on. He had raising canes last night, so. But 80 tons of weight is how much this turntable by itself weighs. Who out here can tell me, what is 80 tons? I thought I heard someone say, what was that? What? 2 semi-loads. Yeah, that is a new one. I've never heard that one. But I'm looking for a number. Thank you, sir. 160,000 pounds. That is the mathematically correct answer. So, Jason, what is the real answer as to how much 80 tons is?
Heavy.
Heavy. That's right. This 80-ton turntable, we're here in just a minute, going to be bringing 125 tons of locomotive out here on it. 205 tons, 410,000 pounds will be getting turned right here in front of you. Back in the day, they were turning steam locomotives on this. They could easily weigh anywhere from 180 to over 200 tons by themselves. And they were turning this turntable with a steam locomotive on it by hand. This is known as an Armstrong table. There were poles at each end of these rails, one person in each corner, balancing the locomotive on this turntable over a 6-foot diameter bearing in the middle. The engineer would watch that bar, and when it teeters downward, it's balanced 4 people that would push this turntable around by hand. Of course, today, this is the 21st century. It is February 15th, 2026, and we're going to use a little bit of 1980s technology. Underneath this little house right here, we have a 25 horsepower electric motor. We're going to let it do all the work. And so with that aid of that motor, Jason can turn this turntable with one finger, making him the strongest man on the planet. Is that the finger you're going to use, Jason?
Yes, it is.
Is that your nose-picking finger?
Oh, it's just...
Ugh. Now, don't worry about Jason hurting himself. Again, all he's got to do is push the button there, that'll activate that motor, and it'll turn the turntable and the locomotive around. You also don't have to worry about me and Jason out here with this all-steel turntable, though. Electricity will not go through a bad conductor. And that is not the worst one I've got, by the way. Locomotive number 710, pulling your train today, was built in 1950 by the Electromotive Division of General Motors. It was delivered brand new to the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway. Before I go any further, yes, that is the same General Motors where I'm thinking it is. This locomotive was delivered brand new to the NC and St. L Railway, operated by them until about 1957, when they became part of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. The LM operated this engine as their number 478 until 1975, when it was involved in a nasty accident near Birmingham, Alabama. The engine was then sold for scrap and purchased out of a scrapyard by this teeny, tiny little railroad that I bet not a single one of you have ever heard of. Amtrak. Amtrak maintenance trains between Boston, Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. on what's known as the Northeast Corridor. They used it until the early 2000s when we acquired it from them via a locomotive place up in McDonald, Ohio. Up in the crowd, we have our engineer Andrew. Make sure you're waving in the front of that nice ride to get us over here to East Chattanooga today. As built, the 710 was a model GP7. What is a GP7? I'm glad you asked, ma'am. GP7, General Purpose Type 7. General Purpose locomotive designed for literally doing anything that the railroad needed it to do. It could pull freight trains, it could pull passenger trains, or it could switch cars in a yard or a terminal. And it was equipped with a 16-cylinder, 1,500 horsepower diesel motor. After it was wrecked in the 70s, it was modified and upgraded to a model GP9. The main difference between a GP7 and GP9 is 250 horsepower. This engine is now equipped with a 16-cylinder, 1,750 horsepower diesel motor. That diesel motor is inside the long hood behind the letters NC and St. L. It is doing 2 things. It turns a big air compressor to make air for the brakes, because stopping is a little bit on the important side. And then right behind the engineer's cab is a big electrical generator that makes electricity at over 600 volts direct current. That electricity has been passed to a motor on each axle of the locomotive, and that is what ultimately is going to move locomotive 710 up and down the railroad. This is known as a diesel-electric locomotive. That technology dates back about 100 years or so to about 25, and it's still the same basic technology used today in modern locomotives. Though today's modern locomotives can easily exceed over 4,000 horsepower, and they're also running on alternating current instead of direct current. Now that being said, we are now finished with the demonstration of the turntable. The engine's going to come on and go get on the other end of the train. While our conductor and engineer are doing that, you can follow me down here to that orange cone. I'll drop the barricade and we'll head over to the repair shop. Take a look in there. Because without this facility here at East Chattanooga, this repair shop, what we do here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum would not be. The locomotive wheel shop that you'll see on any railroad of any size anywhere in North America. Involved in the production of was a 1971 release film entitled Fool's Parade, starring Jimmy Stewart, Ann Baxter, Strother Martin, and a very young Kurt Russell. Other movies we've been in over the years include Hard Times with Charles Bronson and Strother Martin, The Last Days of Frank and Jesse James with Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson. We were featured in Fled with Lawrence Fishburne and Stephen Baldwin, Cobb with Tommy Lee Jones, October Sky with Jake Gyllenhaal, Chris Cooper, and Laura Dern. We were featured in Heaven's Fall with Timothy Hutton, The Adventures of O.C. Nash with Skylar Day and Keith Carradine, Warm Springs with Tim Blake Nelson and Kathy Bates, Leatherheads with George Clooney, Water for Elephants with Robert Pattinson, Reese Witherspoon, and Christoph Waltz, The Lost Valentine with Betty White and Jennifer Love Hewitt, 42 with Chadwick Boseman and Harrison Ford. Then the most recent movie we were part of was a Netflix movie that came out a little over a year ago called 6888, about the 6,888 Women's Army Corps during World War II. That movie stars Kerry Washington, Susan Sarandon, Sam Watterson, Dean Norris, and Oprah Winfrey. It is directed by Tyler Perry. So the TV shows we've been in over the years include Johnny Cash's 1974 TV special, Riding the Rails. We were in Great Scenic Railway Journeys on PBS. We were in a series called Tracks Ahead. We were in episodes of Waltons. We were in 2 different TV miniseries, Eleanor and Franklin and Mama Flora's Family. We were in Travel Channel special on private railroad car ownership. You can see us in a bonus feature on a VeggieTales DVD called It's a Meaningful Life. And then you can also see us in 2 different History Channel series back when they still showed history on the History Channel. We were in The Men Who Built America and Only in America with Larry the Cable Guy. Get her done. And we were also featured in we've also been featured in a fair number of music videos over the years as well. Some of these include Turk by Johnny Cash, Creepin' by Aaron Church, You Can Go Home by the Desert Road Band, You Can't Blame the Train by the Hollanders, Trying to Stop Your Leaving by Dirk Bentley, Big Iron Horses by Restless Heart, Summer in Dixie by Confederate Railroad, Midnight Train by the Charlie Daniels Band, Trains by Cody McCarver. Choo Choo Coming by Wyatt Ellis. And one of my favorites that we were in, Long Black Train by Josh Turner. And in the meantime, I'm going to hush up for a few minutes, let y'all enjoy your train ride. Our next stop is Grand Junction Station. into Grand Junction at this time. On behalf of all of our staff, I would like to thank you for riding with us today on the Missionary Ridge Local. Consider coming back and riding with us again. We've got plenty of other trips that you can pick from throughout the year, including trips to Chickamauga and Seminole, Georgia. We have trips to the Hiwassee River Gorge. We have special events like Day of Thomas, the Wizard Train. We have trips, Christmas trains. We have dinner trains. More information on all these other trips and special events can be found on our website at tbrail.com. That is TV as in TennesseeValleyRail.com. If you enjoyed your trip, we would also appreciate a favorable review on Google and or TripAdvisor. And if you enjoyed your trip today, again, my name is Travis, and this is the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. On the other hand, if you did not enjoy your trip today, in that case, my name is David C. Light, and I'm an engineer for Norfolk Southern. Next stop, Birmingham, Alabama. If anyone on here knows David, feel free to tell him that. I ain't scared of him.
I wish I'd have got that video.
I do too. I wish I knew that.
So you didn't know I was gonna do it.
I would have
David would be like, wait, what? What? He would, if he was on here, he would pop up like super.
Yeah.